This video is brought to you by Architect Network and our online platform of courses where you can learn from world-class architects working in some of the practices that you can see in these videos. You can learn Grasshopper, Revit, Rhino Inside, Twinmotion, and some of our new courses on AI, and lots more courses that we're delivering over the next year. So please, if you like this video, check out our courses in the link below so we can keep bringing you more content like this.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to our Architect Tours. Firstly, we want to say a huge thank you to the response that we've had to the tours. This is the first time we've been able to talk to you since we filmed all the London episodes in our content week. And because of the response, we've decided to come out here to Copenhagen to show you around some of the architecture firms we have here. Like London, it's a hub for architecture. And today we're starting at one of the most Danish firms I can think of. The building even looks extremely Danish from the outside. From the inside, it's very Danish. It's 3XN, and we're going to be talking to Ken Clausen, who is the digital design lead in the office, and we're going to be talking to him about their use of BIM, computation, how they're playing with AI, and all the other tools and technologies that they're working with. But without any further ado, let's go and take a look. All right, guys, we're here in 3XN with Ken Clausen. He's head of digital practice here at 3XN, and he's going to show us around. Maybe give us a little introduction to the office, like how many people have you got here? Incredible office, incredible space, and a little bit about the background of the office.
Yeah, welcome to Copenhagen, to this office here, this space. We are about 150 people in this office here today. Worldwide, I think we are maybe around 180. And we are a very mixed group here. We have researchers, we have interior designers, architects, computational designers, everything in one house here, trying to really avoid having walls. So very much open space, which is stocking sometimes, especially after Corona, where everybody is online having meetings. So there's of course an interesting struggle here, but this is the space we're working. We've been in this space for almost 10 years now. And it's a listed building, it's old. It's an old gunboat house factory. So what you see here, when it steps down towards the water, they were basically building the ships here and then smashing it out in the water afterwards. So that's kind of the story, and also why it steps down from this level where you enter and then down to the water at the other end. And it is a fantastic space to be in. And it also is very inspiring because when we are talking about transformation today, this is an example of a transformation where it has been so much, and now it's an office space for us. That also always lives in transformation, of course, with offices scaling up and down. We want a meeting room, we want a bigger model workshop, and everything needs to be adaptable here in this space.
Let's touch on some of these models. You got this incredible exhibition space, which is beautifully crafted. Maybe talk us through some of the products and some of the models.
Yeah, beautiful crafted now. I also like that it's a little bit chaotic around us here, that you also see a little bit of process models as well. But this here is a building that is opening up in September this year. It's an arena in the old Olympic Park in Munich. And it's an ice hockey and basketball arena, very multifunctional arena. And a lot of the things that went into this model here is Grasshopper, it's scripting, it's a lot of things. I think one good story that we'll take out of this that was really new to me is that just after we won competition, we were paired up with the facade contractor, Frena Reifer, and immediately we were working with them from really having design models that was focused on fabrication. So usually we tend to say that our models go all the way to fabrication. We know there's many steps down the line. But what was very fascinating about this process here was that a lot of the information we got on optimizing our shape came directly from fabrication. That's it was a very new process, I would say. Models doesn't always have to be 0.0 in tolerance in that world. So how do you adjust to that world from digital to analog? That was quite fascinating and a very interesting process.
That's really interesting that you actually worked with the contractor at that early stage, because you don't usually get that.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of magic can happen, because you know what you can do, what you can't do, and it works well with scripting. You can add that into your script or your
yeah, and I think also maybe to add on this, it's also that when different skill sets meet, there's an opportunity to bend the rules both ways.
Yeah.
So you're learning so much in all of these different about a world that you thought you knew a lot about. We have been building buildings before, but you learn so much about what actually happens in that process.
Yeah.
And suddenly you can inform with other ideas, other processes, other ways of looking maybe at math. Geometry, all of those layers are suddenly being part of the conversation with the manufacturer as well.
Yeah.
So that was a big learning curve. I will also say that the story behind that relationship already is derived from our Olympic building we made in Lausanne years before. That's where the relationship started. And from there on, we kind of had a, let's say, a trusted relationship going forward with the next model here and the next process. So
again, that's like when you start building on that intelligence from the last project is really important.
Yeah, I also think what is fascinating here is the landscape here, and this is maybe a very aesthetical model, but the landscape is very much not to be touched in this Olympic Park. Which also means that when you see some of the footage already down there, and when you are down there, like the playfulness with the facade and how it lifts up and down, not that much wayfinding, it's the shape itself that tells where you enter and exits, and how it also like works and plays with the landscape was both important for us, but also for the city of Munich, of course, to maintain that kind of story that the park has.
Is this a bit of a bigger facade mock-up?
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that was when we were doing nice facade mock-ups. Yeah, but this was the test of trying to figure out if you have facade panels like that, what is the interface between inside and outside? Yeah. Like, how does it work when you have everything from an office space to toilets to so many things inside, and how does that affect the outside of the facade, that interplay? So this year was a very interesting exercise to see what does it take to create these facade elements of fins, as we call them, and how can they be fabricated from flat sheets. So that was the goal all the time, to focus on that. So the top part is bended, and the bottom part is cut out and then welded together because of the strength and the load and how they are bending.
Amazing. Behemoth, just for size-wise, in Europe, what was this? 1.8 something? So that's
you go big or you go home. Isn't that the thing? Yeah, this one here, that's a story of its own. It opened 2 years ago, maybe. It's I think maybe still the biggest transformation done in the world today. 90% of the core structure is maintained,
right?
And then we build on top of that afterwards. So that's a quite big change to the city and to the building. And the reason for this was that first of all, the old building was very outdated, and there's now we don't have the context around here, but there's the water here and the opera house here, and then there's a building in front. So the idea with looking at this tower per se back in the days was to see how can we begin to split up the volume, so that we don't necessarily only look at the vertical connection, but also begin to introduce all of these small, almost family plots all the way up to the building. And it's also kind of finding these rotation views, because to get views directed away from that building that is in front. So that's how the massing is set up. I think a big interesting challenge here was that we also have to remember that this process here was back in 16, 17 when everything kick-started, and that's not at a time where you had like a one-click button from Rhino to Revit and from design to delivery.
Those were the good days.
These were the fantastic days. That's where you really got an Oscar if you could do an interoperability tool between the two softwares, right? That was the good old days. Today
Excel days.
The Excel days. I would also say for us that's when we the first time create our own interoperability workflow between the two programs from hardcore coding, only coding the facade from A to B, but this one here per se, actually quite fast went into Revit. It is Grasshopper generated, but very, very early after we tried to see how far can we push Revit in kind of the Revit old basic world here. So it was a learning curve for us, for good and for bad because it was and still is, it was our first tower. So there's a lot of square meters to cover. There's a lot of automation possibilities in it, but we honestly didn't know what we were getting into. So sometimes learning this about bending the rules and learning new stuff is quite nice when we then begin afterwards to set it up in our workflows in here.
It's incredible you built such, I mean it's a big building, but you still managed to retain a lot of the existing building. That's quite rare for a tower.
Rare for many things, I would say, but rare for a tower 100%. I think the connections inside and how you work with these models is is very, very difficult today. We have a world that is not digitalized, and that's the world we want to transform. So together with engineers, they spend a lot of time developing the digital twin of the old versus
Scanning
mimicking
the old
to the new one. Yeah, together with Arup, for example, finding that kind of sweet spot between what is old, what is new, what has maybe shifted a lot away from the drawings, what are still close up. I think that's some of the learnings that we're using a lot today. Start in the basement, look how the structure is set, and then slowly you build up the knowledge in the space as you go up. And that kind of digital twin world is 100% something we are seeing more and more of in our process. And the smarter we can get this up and running, the better. It's still, in my mind, very analog because there's so much risk and security you need to take on the way. But learning from this year, there's so many opportunities going forward also with transformation projects. Yeah, and this was just like a big scale, of course, and this year's maybe a medium scale office, but it kind of runs on the same levels of respecting what is new, what is old, and how you merge those two worlds together.
That's an incredible project. One thing I got to ask you is, I always see with your work, and I'm seeing here, there's like a lot of parametric facades. I see there's like a lot of really nice, subtle movements. Talk to me about like, how do you guys work with computational facades? Is it like environmentally driven? Is it kind of aesthetics? Like, how do you guys get into the facades with computation?
I think to answer that, I have to step a little bit back and say that nothing here starts with technology first. It's all of the visions about the program, the users, the context. All of these layers are just as important for us. So that research starts even before all of the projects that you see here. And it can be shape-driven, it can be climate-driven, it can be there's so many layers to that process here. And yes, we are using Rhino, Grasshopper scripting to develop those ideas. But in, I'll say, the first many rounds, it can also be simple copy-pasting around, exploring the techniques. That's also a little bit how I see computational design. It is part of your toolbox. And depending on how not only skilled you are, but also how driven you are and how idea generating, let me say differently, you can cut it out. Also how everyone today knows how to work with those tools, in my opinion, or have the ability to work and learn those tools. So what is then the difference today? That's the person sitting in front of the screen that comes with the inspiration, the ideas, the collaborating with all of these different skill sets in here. And that's where it starts. And yes, there's maybe a clear method of how we approach facades in here, but some of the things we try to keep very, very subtle is the movements in the shape. We don't want to go crazy in shapes in and out and forming it too much. The small subtle movements, that's enough for us, so that the building itself explains what it is and what it can do.
And I think that's what I mean. I always see you guys have these really nice subtle like movements in the facade and the building, and it's super nice. But I think your point on like, it always starts with the design and computation is just a tool. That's a reoccurring theme that we're always trying to like illustrate to the audience, that it's not just like a magic button people press. It's like a tool.
Sadly, I think it is becoming that in some sense. We are becoming so fast and smart that we maybe have lost a little bit of agility and flexibility, and also having a little bit of fun with things. It becomes almost too much a goal to optimize and make it smarter, instead of just making it work and making it functional and making it part of a full project. And I think what also encapsulates this when you say computational design, for me it has been a statement for years that if you are a computational designer, you also have designer in your title. Please remember that. And that kind of dialogue, I think, is very important in our process, that we don't really see that you have a specific process and a specific mindset here. We like that you are different. We like that you approach design differently. And I think that's the strength in this office, or at least why I enjoy the days here, is that you can ask one question and then you get so many different answers, because people maybe don't know that they are breaking the rule or asking a weird question, but it just inspires you. It's so boring to talk to your own reflection every day and talk to only a technology group, but this is about having the opportunities to talk to sustainability engineers or very, very skillful detail construction architects, or talking to finance and operations. There's so many questions that pops into your mind. Oh, we could also do it like that. There's suddenly a tool that we were developing in a facade, but the method behind can suddenly be applied to a plugin we're doing for the operations in here. And I think that's the quality about having these skill sets mix and match in all of those different projects.
Super nice. Yeah, I think your point on you're a computational designer is another great point. Like some of the best computational people are great at computation, but they're also great designers.
Exactly.
That's a really good point.
But I think it's fair to say that it is okay to also be a problem solver. Like problem solver and design solver sometimes come in the same package, and sometimes they are very much split. But then it's up to us to create the relationships where they can meet and inspire each other in that process. And I think that's maybe a hope where we are going towards again, that the technology becomes a bridge between people. At the moment, it has been very much focused on getting smarter, getting faster, making everything real time, which is interesting and cool for scalability. But for the design and all of those ideas, I'm a little bit afraid we're becoming very similar to many other companies. Maybe we all have found the right way, or we are looking at the same sources today. I don't know what it is, but that's
the zeitgeist of social media and online. Maybe AI is the answer to take us out of that. All right, guys, we're joined by Sam Sweeney, who's head of BIM here at FreeXN, and maybe talk a little bit about your role as head of BIM, and I know you're also involved in this project as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Ollie. Nice to have you in the office finally. So yeah, I'm head of BIM here at 3XN. What that mainly entails is how we can take our beautiful designs in the early stage and kind of harness those and keep the architecture whilst we create BIM models that then go on to hopefully get built in the built environment. So that's what we're focused on here, and trying to do that in the most efficient way and not damaging the architecture while we take hold of it.
Spanning that world between Rhino and Grasshopper and
exactly,
Revit, of course,
exactly. I guess that's a big focus here at 3XN, where we don't exclusively work in Revit. We're very much a Rhino focused office, and obviously a lot of the sort of BIM stuff we do also touches on Rhino and early phase design. So using a lot of Grasshopper, Rhino, Rhino Inside and scripting.
Was there a certain point you guys move into BIM, like after? Because we used to work, as soon as anything comes out of concept, it goes into Revit. Do you guys have like a certain point, or can it be anywhere?
It's getting earlier and earlier. That's something we're definitely focusing on, and obviously you have buildings like tall buildings that you've looked at today, like 2FA or QQT. We're obviously moving into Revit earlier is advantageous when you're working across towers. If it was, say, a small art gallery, maybe we keep that in Rhino longer because we're just producing plans in 2D, doing sketch Rhino models. But obviously when we have a whole stack of, say, 30, 40 levels, which are repetitive or change, say, 4 times, it's easier to produce and make mass changes in Revit. And we're also seeing a lot of the sort of transformation projects we're working on now. We have a lot of surveys existing buildings and having this sort of common data environment to house all of that is quite important for us. Everyone's sort of working from like one source of truth rather than having lots of multiple models around, and that's another reason why we're trying to move into BIM earlier. There's no fixed kind of time, it's just on a project by project basis when the skill sets of the staff and the project requirements demand it.
Well, let's talk about this product. I got a fun little pointer for the audience because I'm sort of very familiar with this area because for those of you who watched the Big London episode, you might have seen there was a construction site out the window. Well, this is it. And the original Big London office was this corner here. So we're quite familiar with, with the site. And now you guys are building this thing in London, which is pretty cool. But yeah, talk to us about this guy.
Yes, so this is right in the middle of London, where sort of all the big towers have been going up over the past 10, 15 years. And I personally worked on this from the design phase through to sort of when we handed over to our local architects. So that was working in Rhino. Mostly I was focused on the facade. So working in Rhino, having a sort of a Grasshopper model to help us quickly iterate, and then to sort of help us to look at what all the panel types were. And then moving on to our third stage, so stage 3, when we moved into Revit in this instance, when we had to create a BIM or a Revit-based model, then to work with the engineers and our local architects. I think what was nice about this is when we're creating, say, this Rhino or Grasshopper model, we didn't create it in silos. We didn't create a Rhino model, then just chuck it away, then create a Revit model.
Yeah.
When we were making our Rhino, or by extension Grasshopper model, we were already embedding the intelligence in that to help us kind of somewhat automate the creation of our Revit model. So trying to not see it as two distinct things, but how we can, I guess, leverage off one stage to help us make a more efficient and more accurate next stage.
Yeah.
And that worked really well.
Was there any kind of tools that you guys were playing with to go back and forth? I know there's like Rhino Inside or Beam and that kind of stuff. Was there any particular ones?
So Rhino Inside was really heavily used on this. So basically what we did is we had this really nice model in Grasshopper after the second stage, and we kind of could identify all of the data for each panel. So we knew what level it was, where it was in terms of each of the two volume stacks, what sort of index it was along, and then we knew heights, what type it was, these angled cuts, we knew the angle. So we had, say, I think it was about 15 data points. Then I went and made all the Revit families for that. Long process. I'll get onto Beam.
Unfortunately, you can't automate
then I'll get onto Beam about that after. So then when I could then automatically place, I think it was about 6,000 pounds, we actually automated the process of placing all of these panels, a very typical thing to do, and then we could then derive the angles of each of these. So then when we actually had a change in our design and the angles would change slightly, rather than manually going and changing them, which is time consuming and also at risk of error, we could just automatically drive the angle changes across that, which was really nice. We didn't use Beam on this, but then I was really happy with the model, but it took a long time. And when you're often just handing it over to a local architect and they will rebuild it, for instance, you're kind of like, why did I do that? So then on subsequent jobs, we're now looking at how we can just use Beam to get the sort of minimal viable product. So we have all of our geometry there, but we're not making it as sort of computationally smart as what this one was. So yeah, it was Rhino Inside that opened our eyes to Beam, essentially.
I like that. That's a good line.
Yeah.
That's a good line. And just give us like an overview. What is the product? Is it mixed use, office, residential?
Yep. So it's an office tower. Office in both towers. Kind of the nice thing is there's a winter garden in the central space just here, which is was originally across two heights, now only across one single height. But obviously, in London, I guess in the summer or the winter, you want to be outside, but in winter it's obviously a bit cold. So this should hopefully capture a lot of light, so have some heat. But then you can see there's amazing views out over London in this area here. So yeah, it's now on site. Hole has been dug.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with
and
the hole.
Hole and hoarding will be there for a few years. And then hopefully it'll be a very good addition to the London skyline when it's done.
You'll definitely get epic views from here because
I think it'll be amazing. Yeah, and then obviously what's really nice is these big open cuts here, which are big like open areas with the spiral staircases, cafes, breakout spaces, which I think could be really effective. And this sort of ground lobby area that links the two roads over here is a really beautiful space as well. It's very interesting to work on. I think from a technology point of view, it was one that taught us a lot, taught us positive things, and also, I guess, things that we could improve that we've now put onto other projects, high rises in London and other projects we're working on. So this was one of our first ones that really opened our eyes to what was possible with these sort of new technologies, which are coming out, say, in the last few years.
So this here, Ollie, this is our model workshop. This is where all of the models are being created. We do everything internally. The office is located in a very creative neighborhood, so we have the art and architecture school just over here as a neighbor. So there's a close collaboration between us and then our model workshop, where we have a lot of interns coming in, helping out on models, and depending, of course, on deadlines and if it's boosting up or down, they come in and help and get the learning experience and are creating quite a lot of these amazing models.
I have to say it's one of the most sleek, organized workshops we've seen.
Oh, that's is that good or bad?
That's a good thing. Yeah.
But I think for this model workshop, we kind of cover the basics and then a little bit more. Yes, we have a 3D printer, but when we want to print bigger sizes, we have a collaboration in town, and that's usually how we do it. When we go big, we find collaborations. Or else we build a lot of the models you saw in the entrance. We build all of those in here. So there's a bunch of different laser cutters in the back. And yeah, the usual suspect knife cutter as well that works even faster and more clean. Yeah.
Analog and digital.
Again, back to the analog digital, that's a little bit of my focus area. Please never forget the analog world. I hope that people are still remembering we are building for that world. Yeah. Even though we like to go more digital, we are listening to the metaverse. I have another opinion about that. But I think it's important to remember that world a little bit sometimes. Sometimes we can't forget it. You can be drawn into solving your geometry puzzle, and then you've completely forgotten the analog world of how does a material touch? How do they join together? Do they not join together? I think that's a quite important mindset to have. Go out, kick the mock-ups if they don't work, figure out why they don't work, listen to the fantastic skilled people that are manufacturing this, and try to figure out how the interface is then with your next iteration and your next iteration.
Is there a particular technology you've seen adopt more in the workshop, like 3D printing or even augmented reality to help that kind of stuff? Do you see any kind of technology that's really thrived in the workshop?
It seems like it's always a little bit back to the basic for us, and that is the laser cutter and the knife cutter, and starting from the sheet and then creating that a little bit more volumetric. Of course, we use 3D printing where that is needed and when it fits in. But I think for us, the materialization of models is more where it has changed a lot. You had the super wide polished models. Yeah. Then you went a little bit more into almost a rainbow of colors. Yeah. And now we've moved a little bit more into clean, balanced timber materials that are mixed with some more white, clean materials. So I think it depends a little bit on where you are in time and who are responsible for what projects, that it ranges a lot. So I'll more say on materials than on the adopting new technology. I was hoping that more and more mixed reality are coming in here, but it seems like it's still waiting for that perfect push. Yeah. And I have a little bit of a hope that the mixed reality for us maybe is not so much about the fabrication in-house, but it could be a layer on top of our models. So that when you go out and present your models, you don't need to do a billion of boards or a booklet, and then you have your clients and visitors trying to navigate between having a board here and then your model here, but everybody has their phone. Why is that not creating that interface on top? Yeah. I think that could be interesting and a future way of explaining and working with models, that you pair those two worlds together.
That overlaid augmented.
Yeah,
cool.
I think more that's the story than the technology itself. Yeah.
All right, we're here with Kåre, Head of Innovation and a partner here at 3XN. Why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of what is the innovation team or department and this pretty epic looking column we got here?
Sure, yeah, no, thanks for coming here and you're now visiting GXN. So we are the research and innovation company that was spun out of 3XN Architects in 2007. GXN was put into the world with the realization that there's a lot of research and innovation that can happen from within architecture projects. But there's also a lot of stuff that can't happen. So an architecture project is big, there's a lot of money involved, there's a lot of partners, and in that environment risks scale quickly. So you don't get to test out an experimental new material at scale, for example. You don't get to play around too much with new technologies that you don't really understand, and maybe you don't get to explore the same problem over and over again because projects change and some projects have different requirements. Yeah. So GXN was really spun out to enable us to do all the stuff the architects don't get to do. So we get to get very excited and play around and test out new materials, and we do that through collaboratively funded research projects. So external funding, material providers, technology providers, try and help them think about what their technologies or materials mean for the built environment. Increasingly, we are also starting to sell these activities as commercial consultancy, sitting next to 3XN on projects. So we're trying to bring the learnings we have from the research side into large-scale projects with 3XN and with other partners, so we can have an impact at scale.
That's cool. I never fully knew the relationship between the two, but it's quite interesting.
It's a very it is a good mix, and I think that the key thing here is a very close collaboration. Yeah. By having these two different companies, we can basically look at the same challenges in two slightly different ways. Yeah. That allows us to come up with more comprehensive answers and explore a bit more different types of solutions. So increasingly, GXN is supporting 3XN in the early stages. helping them do research around how to improve sustainability of their buildings. I'm sure Ken has talked about some of our transformation projects, for example. That's an example of a very close collaboration where the 3XN architecture team and the GXN research team is really trying to join forces and help our clients and developers think about how to approach the projects they have in a new way.
That's interesting. So you're R&Ding and it's trickling directly down into products, basically.
That's the aim, and we love to do experimental projects like this one, but overall the key for us is that we have an impact on the industry as a whole, and we want to make sure that we can improve the environmental footprint of our buildings while also ensuring that the life and experience of people in the buildings is taken care of.
Very cool. Maybe talk to us about this.
I can, yeah. So this is
or column, or
this is an example of something that's definitely more towards the R&D camp than the commercial consultancy camp. But this is called Bioconcrete. It's a collaboration between GXN, an American company called Biomason that does biocement, and a Danish artist called Silas Inu. The project was part of a larger exhibition here in Copenhagen, which was trying to take experimental materials and by using architects and artists in collaborations, trying to think about what these materials could be. So the key material here is what's called biocement. So this column looks, and well, sort of looks, but certainly acts like a concrete column. As you know, the main sort of key active component in concrete is cement. Cement requires heating to very high degrees of the base material, so it emits a lot of CO2. Biocement, on the other hand, works with mineralization based on biological processes. So the way this column has been bound together is by having an aggregate and pouring a mixture, proprietary mix of Biomason, of course, over that, and enabling the bioorganisms in that mixture to work. And over 72 hours, these organisms, through their metabolism, have mineralized, basically creating new material, and then binding all the aggregate in the column together. And here we have this product here. So when we were getting involved, Biomason exists as a commercial project, but we are talking at the scale of tiles. Okay. And right now we are exploring, and so what we were exploring here was, what would happen if we scale that up? How big might we be able to go? It's of course very experimental, and there's a lot of challenges still to get something like this into the building. But I think what it does is it enables us to explore what the commitment to decarbonizing of the built environment really means, and play around with a super interesting company and a fun artist and see where this might take us.
That's amazing. I've never heard of bioconcrete before, actually. So
it's
I'm learning something new today.
That's great. I mean, one of the key things with stuff like this is, of course, that we can take something that can be quite abstract, decarbonization of the built environment, and make a very tangible and visible story, which is also part of the work we do. We need to help each other think through and tell new stories about what we want to do with our buildings.
I'm guessing so it's significantly got a much lower carbon footprint than concrete. What are the constraints right now? I'm assuming it takes a lot longer to cure, for example?
Curing time for this has been 72 hours. So not massively, no. The key challenge here is that this hasn't been tested or proven at this scale. So if we wanted to bring this further, we need to figure out how the mixture binds with rebar or other reinforcement, for example. You need to figure out how the column deforms under pressure and all these sort of things that would make it possible to put in a scale. So right now this is very much in the realm of an art project. But who knows where this will take us in the future.
Very cool.
Yeah, the fish market is a scale on its own, I would say. If I start from scale, so we get a perspective on this tiny model here. This measures 100 meters by 200 meters. So that equals if you have 3 soccer fields and put them on top, then you are beginning to get the scale of the project. Wow. And from column to column, we span from 20 to 30 meters. So that's huge spans in this project, and it's, as said, it's the new fish, the Sydney Fish Market in Sydney, where you have the boats coming in with fish from here, and then you have below more the auction halls and all of the life that a fish market usually have, and then on top it's packed with restaurants and offices and that extra layer to it. So everything from restaurants to private, like people are coming here to buy the fish to eat, and it's becoming a new landmark. It's replacing the old fish market, and now they want something new.
And is it a timber structure, or like what's the?
Yeah, the model here doesn't represent the full substructure, but it is a timber structure, hybrid in that sense that all of the columns that are coming up are steel, so the joints themselves are steel, but all of the roof, basically 90% of the roof is timber. There's certain places where we needed to add steel because of the function below, but the rest is timber. And as said, when you have timber measuring that long distances, some of them are quite tall. So we are talking like 30 meters and 1.9 meter tall columns to hold this roof up. And on top here, we have skylights that are letting kind of the light through. And I would say this here really represents the layer between 3XN and GXN and how we collaborate together. This has been a collaboration from day one. And it still is today. Now we are on site. There's a lot of things happening on site. But as a starting point, this curved roof here is not curved only for fun. It has a lot of additional climate studies on top of it. And one of the key aspects we looked at first, and we were told by the engineers, that when it rains in Sydney, it rains a lot.
Yeah.
And if you imagine having this as a flat roof, water will not be able to go anywhere and everything will crash. So we, in the early days, started developing our own like simple particle simulation tools that could help predict and guideline the surface a little bit. And we managed to find, after a lot of iterations, a point where we have two areas on the roof where all of the water are collected. And that goes down and is reused in the building and also for watering all of the plants around and all of the nature.
Wow.
So that's one of many collaborations where you really see that impact of having so many different skill sets at the office really comes through in that project. And this is one of many stories. I will say the second story that has been very difficult for me personally dealing with this geometry and this project here is scale. And we speak about mixed reality, we speak about mock-ups, we speak about so many things, but to really understand sitting in that tiny screen, the scale of this project is very difficult. Yeah. But the fantastic thing is that when we are in this space here, and if you look up, it's maybe a little difficult, we can show a little bit later, you have these triangles at the end of the view here. That measures one of the 200 or 300 skylights on this roof here. So that was my reference all the time, looking at these skylights and understanding, okay, this is the scale when I have a person standing next to it. And that's a little bit interesting when you're working with technology today. You're losing so much scale. How do you get that back into your process?
Yeah, even looking at the model here, it doesn't. I feel like it's probably bigger in reality.
Yeah, it could look like something that is just placed here around the harbour and that's it, right? But it's not the Copenhagen fish market, it's the Sydney fish market though. But there's quite a lot of layers to this project here. And I think one of the learnings we are seeing today is also working with timber as a structural material. We are moving, in my opinion, a little bit away from working with surfaces that all of our models are doing when we work with IFC, when we work with all of the object-based models. We are always looking at the surface and the object. Yeah. But I think as architects, we need to understand that the connections and joints are becoming our new detail area, our new focus area, because else we will give that magic away to engineers that will quickly come up with a solution. I think that's something that we have learned in this project when we have all of these beams coming in from so many directions and in so many angles. How do you map that? How do you create a nice detail out of that? How do you learn about sequencing? What do you put in first so you're not suddenly can't put in the last piece? I think some of those learnings in our timber team is something that we are focusing quite a lot on after we have been working on this project for many years now.
Yeah, there's a real growing trend in timber construction, and we see it in some of the other firms, but it gives you really nice control over some of those details.
Yeah, and personally me also having to flag here, I'm a huge geometry lover in all ways, and for me the method has always been, and that maybe also relates to the BIM workflow we talked about earlier, that for me geometry is texture, it's shape, it's grids, and then it's data. And if those are linked together, I think the magic happens there. Yeah. But for me, it also represents that you have somebody who are material experts, as we heard in GXN before, and making them working with tech and data and geometry. I think that's where the fish market really represents all of the skills in the office and just in general as well. So that's been an amazing project that hopefully will open within like the next 1.5 years. They're installing the timber structure here in the next coming month or two. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays off. But yeah.
Awesome project.
Yeah, it's a fantastic one, and also where you can see that our sustainability engineers that we have on board as well really have an impact to these processes as well. When it comes to all of the layers that you can think of climate simulations, is put into this project here. Yeah, but it's pretty cool here. And then you can see the kayak club is there, and then we have a couple of other. There's some kind of fashion offices down there and things. But I think here what is quite amazing is that we have the ability to go and have lunch here every day. Or when I say every day when there's some good weather here in Denmark. But another thing is also that because we have water here, and when the wind changes, the water rises. And it can sometimes get up to maybe up to 20 or half a meter up here. Wow. So that's why we need heavy doors that needs to be closed at night, because sometimes you can look out when you come to work and you can't see the tables. They're basically just in the water. Right. So that's why they're all connected, so they don't float away. I don't know. Yeah.
So you have a waterproof office.
We have a waterproof office, but it is quite amazing to sit out here, because here usually the sun at around 12 is perfect because it hits here. Yeah. And that's why the parties are always here after hours, because that's where the sun is afterwards. But it's a pretty amazing place to also go and have meetings sometimes when the weather gets a little bit better. It's not that long, it's not that far to just go out in here and have the meeting instead.
Do you have anyone in the office that commutes by boat?
Not by boat, but we had one son that came with the kayak from the office, yeah. But now with the kayak club next door, of course you can see already some there, but there's also what they call these these boats.
Canal boats.
Yeah, so you have to sit here 5 times a day and wave hello that they're coming, and then over here you just jump in the water here. It's maybe not the most cleanest base here, but when there's a party going on and the weather is nice, then we just jump in. Yeah, so it's pretty amazing.
And you got Copenhill.
Yeah, Copenhill, that's the view. Yeah, and then out here you can see the big industry buildings. That's also where Refn and all of that's Refn out there. That's where all of the places are where you guys are going also for Mikkel and stuff. That's out there as well. Yeah.
All right, Ken, thank you so much for the epic tour in this amazing space. I think we're blown away. So thank you for your time. Let's get into some technology talk. I know you've got some good points we want to touch on. Maybe start by giving us like an overview of what is the digital design or design technology. I know different people name it different things. How does that work in 3XN, the office? And also, how do you work with the projects and the teams? Like, do people just come and tap you on the shoulder and say, I've got this problem or that problem? How do you guys work?
It was a long question that deserves a long answer. Around 2 or 3 years ago, we made a little bit of a decision internally. We had a design technology team in our GXN research cluster. But we saw an issue happening that was a positive issue. We saw many of our employees were showing skills and fantastic curiosity in technology, Grasshopper, all of those usual suspects around technology. Also a little bit more code we began to see in more and more of your employees. So we took a decision and decided to explode it all, and decided to say technology is part of everyone here. We are all part of the digital workflow. And instead of having a group, we now believe that everyone kind of can tap into that. It is still, I think, a little bit in a work in progress, but it means that we have a couple of ambassadors in here that are, of course, steering the conversation and the collaboration, but we really want to emphasize the opportunity of having different skill sets meet. So, for example, Sam that you met on the tour and me, we are a couple of these ambassadors that try to tap and link into all of these different interesting conversations. Right. But we see a way bigger potential in having no groups and more skill sets in the conversation. So if I have a weird idea about looking at, for example, data scanners and how that works in here, we can begin to tap into some of the people who are skilled in code and some of the sustainability experts. We can find all of these collaborations in-house, and I think I more believe in that. And I've thought a little bit about that question in the last couple of years. And I've been wondering a little bit, how does a design technology team or group look like today and tomorrow? Yeah. What is the demands for such a group? Like, if it's about that you can code, I have a feeling we are going to set 8 ChatGPTs and then 2 humans in those groups in the future. Because everyone will in some way become more and more technological savvy. So I think the strength is maybe taking some of those specialist knowledge and putting them into a generalist mindset. Yeah. So that's a little bit more the overview of how things are set up here. In terms of how we work, yes, there is, of course, the tapping on the shoulder if there's some issues here and there. But I think it's also very much project dependent. So it never starts with the technology first. It starts with the project, the idea, or where we want to go with it. Then we have a generic layer of tools and methods and people that are skilled in certain directions. But I personally also believe that you need to give a little bit of confidence to those people sitting in those projects and being able to steer them a little bit on their own. And then you're just checking in if it doesn't work, or just checking in if it goes okay. I think I'm more believer in that today than having these groups as we had before. That was also really, really fun and very late nighters and a lot of hacking. But this kind of broad perspective helps me a lot in my daily life to have all of these interesting conversations.
So rather than having a giant BIM team and a giant computational team, it's more about having a few people that can empower the designers to use these tools, or, you know, learn Revit or Grasshopper or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think you hit spot on. Of course, there is sometimes a little bit of discussion about the Christmas tree and the hierarchy of knowledge. And you really would like to not take the level on top down and then bridge it out, but you need somehow to find a middle ground where we get everyone slowly on board here. And yes, some of us can code. And when we sit and talk to people who can't code, it's not fair to compare those, but you can slowly get those in through projects. And I think we are only going to see more and more of those collaborations in projects as we go forward, because everyone uses the same software. And I've also said around on the tour that the emphasis is not on the software anymore, it's the person who asks the questions, like, how do I want to use this? How do I want to explore this? How do I want to develop this?
The thinking behind the process is still the primary thing.
I personally believe, even though I'm a hardcore believer in tech and in all of those fantastic things it offers, I hope that it's still the humans who drive the ship in here, and also going forward and trying to find the balance between all of these new interesting and scary offers we have on the table out there.
You touched on it on your answer there, but we're all using the same stuff, and we've been asking people the same question, which is a super broad, simple question of, what are the softwares you use in the office? And we're literally talking about, you know, Rhino, Revit, Grasshopper, and all these things, just to illustrate to some young architects in the audience that always have these questions: what software do these firms use? So give us an overview of what you guys use.
Afraid of repeating, but yeah, it's Rhino and Grasshopper, of course. It's Revit. It is Enscape. It is V-Ray, both in Rhino and in 3D Studio Max, depending on who is the user. It is the full Adobe package. And as I mentioned before, we more believe in many different skill sets than having these group of specific people. Everything in that Adobe package is used, from the photographer maybe using more Premiere Pro to somebody who's using more Illustrator in the diagrammatic world. So it's a wide range of this. In code, we basically are using Python and HTML. Okay. And that's both to linking all of our technologies together, but HTML to get a lot of the stuff on the web now and tapping more into that. So I think that's for our coding base. But I heard something quite interesting lately, and I dare to say that we also are using ChatGPT like everyone else. And it again comes back to how good you are in prompting. But there's people in here who are becoming so skilled in those prompt models that they don't know how to script, but they have created their own toolbars anyway. I think that's quite interesting. So I have to say that kind of technology breach that is coming now with AI is something we are tapping into. And my answer maybe in 2 years will be a little bit different, or maybe in 2 months. But some of those more common things we, of course, also exploring. But that's the full package.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like we won't go down the rabbit hole of AI yet, but these things like large language models mean that coding becomes so much more accessible.
100%. I will also say that I think it's important that to highlight that we of course use a lot of different climate simulation tools, a full range of those, and it comes both in using some of the good plugins that we all use in Grasshopper, like Ladybug and all of those days, Climate Studio, but we're also beginning to tap into Autodesk Forma and looking a little bit at the speed and behaviors there and how that works out. So some of these tools we also use heavily in our teams.
You know, you can see in a lot of your work, and we talked about it in during the tour, that you have this use of computational design because you're clearly using it as part of your design process. You're also utilizing BIM. You're getting a lot of products built these days. How do you manage between this world of BIM and computation? not only the tools that you use to go between it, but within the team, and also upskilling the designers. Like, are they spending more time in one or the other? Like, how are you balancing this BIM world with the computational world?
BIM, for me, is a methodology that does a lot of good. It is good in organizing, controlling the project. It's good in having a full overview, and it's good in tapping into all of the different stakeholders and models in the process. But I also feel that computational design has both a negative and a positive effect to that process. If I talk about the positive things that has come out of adding more and more computational tools into BIM, it's of course controlling all of our geometry in all of the pipelines, as Sam mentioned before. It is about maybe making people aware that your model has several lives, and it can coexist in so many different worlds. It doesn't need to be specifically in a Rhino or Revit world. It can exist in I Love Excel, it can exist in code, it can exist in so many different formats. And I think those computational tools and methods help us to do that, especially in BIM, where it bridges more and more. But I will also dare to say here that for me, computational design is also about a design exercise and how you elaborate on that. And I have touched on it also in our tour around. And I see a lot of the computational efforts put into BIM is more focusing on optimization and automation. And it's super, super fair and super, super important for, again, making sure that we don't end up in all of the same issues that we all have had over the projects over the years. Yeah. So the more we can get help, the smarter we can do it, the better it is. But when you talk about computational design as a yet another thing in the toolbox, I feel there's so many more layers to it. And I feel there's also resolutions of it. It's about value. It's about the value it creates for your process, the value you're creating for your team, and the value you're creating for the projects. So tapping into all of these models in Grasshopper and code doesn't make any sense if it doesn't have a value to whatever you want to create. So I think there's some kind of optimistic thing in that process of just trying it out, letting it break, accepting that the curves are not clean, but we still have an opportunity to break it. While when we get further down the line, it needs to be more refined. It needs to have a perfect data layer. The structures needs to be correct. So I think there's a positive and negative in those processes, but the more we learn, the better, and the more we, in my personal opinion, provoke and dare to challenge the default, the better it is for moving forward. Sometimes somebody else maybe thinks it's annoying, but that's at least how I see it. And computational methods is a good partner in crime for provoking and disturbing a little bit the balance in here.
Yeah, maybe to continue on that note of computational design and utilizing it in the office, is there an area of computational design where you see it impact the office the most, whereas like such as just simply geometry control, automation, simulation? Is there one that you see is having the biggest impact in the office for you guys?
Yeah, I have witnessed it on myself over the years and have seen many others with success and fail on this. But for me, computational design is maybe tapping a little bit more into this control. I see computational design and the person or persons sitting and having that opportunity to control a project is quite interesting and key to learning a lot. And what I mean is that when you sit with those models, you are working with everything from the skilled facade expert to somebody who is good in plans, and you have the ability to be the middle person or the person in the middle handling all of those different informations into your model. I think that's a fantastic opportunity to always be a little bit in the driver's seat. Of course, you're not maybe being the one who are handling the GPS and the coordinates all the time, but being able to control all of these instances in a project is maybe the first thing I will add to this. The second one is that by having this control and understanding of your methods computationally, you also have the ability to understand when to use what tool and when. I think that's the two strengths for me in this. Right. If you talk about simulation and those aspects, I think they are sub-layers to the process as a whole. But from computational point of view, I think this kind of like really being the one who is in charge of the geometry in the project has a big impact to how we work and tap into different workflows.
Okay, so one thing that we've obviously been asking everyone as we go around is the FOMO hot topic of AI right now. Give us an overview, like, are you guys experimenting with AI? In what way? How are you guys playing with AI in the office right now?
Yeah, that is a FOMO thing that is going on here, but it has a big impact in all industries. There's no doubt, also in ours. And we have done all of the mistakes possible, in my opinion, just going all in on tech, trying to see what comes out of it, and realizing that we don't know what problem we are solving. We're just trying it out. I think it's healthy to do, but you end up in a corner where you don't really know where your context is. And I think all of the tools and applications that are showing so many interesting things are not finding their way into our process yet. We have tried it and errored it, the image generators, the plant generators, and all of those things, but have not really found their way at the moment. And one thing that we realized in our research on this one here is that we need to step a little bit back. So we have in-house here what we call a digital task force. And that task force represents basically the machine room to the boardroom, from floor to VIP, basically. Yeah. So it covers strategy, it covers processes on the floor, it covers everything in between. And it is about monitoring the technology in the industry and how it both affects the industry and us and our process. Yeah. And how we look at this is that we have monthly meetings on it, and then in between there's a lot of things happening. But our time frame is 1 to 3 months and 1 to 3 years. So we are really trying to see what can affect us now and what will affect the office and culture and how we move forward later. And by doing that, it helped us a little bit in stepping back. So we decided to say, what is the best way of getting data points in? So in a low-tech world, we invited all of the partners, the business development and communication into workshops and interviews, a little bit like this here. Yeah. Not with everybody in one room, that will not work at all. So we strategically took maximum 3 people into a room and allowed to steal 1 hour of the time and had 3 questions. We recorded it and we gathered so many data points. And the questions were, first it was about who are we as a company? If you describe 3XN, GXN, how would you describe us? And it's already interesting to see how different partners and communications and BD are looking maybe a little bit differently on it. Then we had a 40-minute chunk where it's about the process. It doesn't have to be digital, it can be analog, all of the things that are good, bad, and the ugly. Yeah. And then we had 10 minutes in the end talking a little bit more about what is the visions both for the industry and for 3XN, GXN in your point of view. And it gave us so many aspects on looking at AI and technology from a human research point of view, to finance point of view, to design process point of view. And this has helped us a little bit now to navigate kind of our second round in this one here. So some of the things we have installed and are trialing and erroring is of course ChatGPT and those prompts. But looking at the infrastructure we already have, it for us would be difficult to scale out ChatGPT. So we, for example, take Copilot in from Microsoft and see it's not matured at all in my opinion, but it maybe have some kind of like some steps on the way to go. But when they get the marketplace up and running, maybe there's some opportunities there. We use also Copilot in GitHub, so sitting in Visual Code and scripting, you have a best friend now. You don't need Stack Overflow or spending a lot of hours in Google anymore. For me, that's a dream coming true, and I can see a lot of our coders here are using that quite heavily. We are tapping more and more into, and how I see maybe the tools that we're using is more tools that already exist in our platforms. So some of these AI-driven tools that exist in Illustrator and Photoshop that basically comes in from the side, we use a lot. And then I will say that there's something interesting happening in the simulation world that will change while we speak here now. We've just had a meeting with Enscape again about their innovation team and what they are seeing as the future of visualization and the future of collaboration. And what I found quite interesting in those conversations is that there's a discussion between speed and precision in the game at the moment. And I'm very curious to see the more speed we add, the more scalability it will get, especially in simulation and climate simulation. Right. Will that find its way back to all of the designers in a way faster way? What will happen there? Do they know how to read the data that they're getting out? Yeah. So I think there's something interesting in those models, and especially also in Enscape with their impact analysis model they are getting in here. So I'll say these are more the topics that we're looking at, but I'm standing a little bit holding back here, not because I love tech, but because I have this thing that the internet kind of democratized information for good and for bad. Yeah. And I feel that AI at the moment is democratizing knowledge for good and for bad. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something very interesting on the horizon in terms of disrupting a lot of the industries, also the architectural industry. And yes, I know maybe some of the partners and the companies listening into this here, but I think it's very healthy that the architectural industry maybe are getting a little bit disrupted now. Yeah. Maybe it's a way of us finding our way now in the future of the world. Instead of keep remembering the steps that we took on the way, maybe there's an opportunity here. Maybe we got lost in some tech that we can't see ourselves out of at the moment. Yeah. I think there's some very interesting, more organizational structures that will happen. Are we going to see a completely new service area that is not going to be these beautiful buildings? Maybe there's another service area that we're tapping into. So there's many things, but what I'm told every day and what I really like, I always remember this quote from one of the partners, is that an architect still needs to understand how to draw a plan, a section, and an elevation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the fundamentals to keep in mind when looking at this here. Do we need something that can automatically create a plan for us? Or do we actually need co-pilots that can help us to think a little bit smarter? And in that dialogue, let's see what happens. So that's a little bit of a broad talk and a more specific
I think you touched on some really great points. I think like one general theme we keep seeing is like the integration of AI is really about amplifying what we do as architects, maybe automating some of the stuff, the more boring stuff that we spend time doing, so we can spend more time on the actual design thinking where we add value. I think we're kind of getting a little bit distracted by, sexy generated images, plans that are just, somewhat created like that. But it's still really the thinking behind it, which is where we add value.
Yeah, the thinking one, and data number two. Maybe I'm going a little bit off script here in terms of AI and what else, but we lately got a little bit interested in data. More to say that we found out that it is quite expensive to have data on our servers. Mm-hmm. And it creates a big carbon footprint to have all of this installed. Servers are expensive.
You mean like all the files?
All of the files, all of the stuff. And usually if you have an apartment of 80 square meters and at one point you simply don't have enough space anymore, you start cleaning up. Yeah. How do you clean a 40-year-old company up with so many legacy stuff? I think that's a quite interesting question. So what we did is that we developed our own data storage scanner that are simply every week scanning all of the behaviors and trends in the office to see how much are we polluting, gigabyte and carbon-wise, how much are we saving, what is the trends, and we are maybe seeing a little bit of a change here. It seems like people are really engaged in changing their behavior of how to model and model clean, and that's where I can be a little bit afraid when we're generating so much with the AI tools that go so fast. We are again ending up in a nightmare of iterations instead of just focusing on the 1 or 2 or 3 trees that looks beautiful out there. Yeah. But it's a quite interesting setup at the moment that maybe is a little bit sided on AI, but behavior-wise, it's changing a lot of the things in here. And maybe I'm finally going to see a clean model designed that goes directly all the way through from A to B, because they can see that all of the content, the assets, all of the things used in there are so smartly designed and created. Yeah.
That's a really nice point. I haven't heard anyone talk about lowering your carbon footprint through how much storage you're taking up on your servers. That's a really interesting point. And it's a good motivation to make sure designers nice, clean models.
Because suddenly it's not cool to be on top. Now you actually want to be in the bottom 10 that are the ones that are not polluting the most. But I think from a model point of view and a health point of view, we were discussing, is there an AI that can go in and clean everything up? But there's not. We need to get the data points correct to be able to sort and create all of those things. But let's see how it goes. I'm open-minded, but I'm more curious about the bigger layers of the industry as a whole, the education layer. Yeah. I think HN is a good platform, like others out there that have the opportunity to change the game, to create education for people who sit in projects and not people who sit in school. Of course, that's also good, but that's way not the thing I'm nervous about in the education layer when it comes to that. It runs so fast out there, but academia and projects still has the same timeline. Yeah. And that's going to be interesting to see how that will change, because it have to in some ways.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. But exciting but scary times.
Yeah, it's exciting. Glass always half full.
The other topic we're talking to people about is kind of digital fabrication. How does digital fabrication play a role? Obviously, that's usually linked to the workshop a little bit, but then I see you guys are working with a lot of mass timber products, and you get into that making side of things, 3D printing. What's your thought on digital fabrication, and are you incorporating into the office in any way at the moment?
That's a very good question, and actually digital fabrication is very close to my heart because it's two words that I like a lot. When they're combined, I like them even more. And that's maybe also my answer. Have been at the office for 10 years. I've seen our workshops and our workflows change multiple times, both in, of course, in staffing, people leave and others come in, but also in how technology can in some way disturb that a little bit. And if I look 10 years back and I look at all of our walls, it was packed with these sketch models that was directly taken from our sketch models in Rhino and then into the model workshop and out again. So we had so much feedback on our models. So that was kind of the first kind of iteration of digital fabrication. And that's where 3D printers, the small ones, became a little bit part of our projects. We got new laser cutters, all of the usual suspects back in the days. And there was kind of an interest in exploring what can you cut with it. Can you cut all of these different fabrics, like how can you put stuff together? There was so much talk around creating those models and experimentations, like mock-ups in 1:5 instead of 1:1, which is also important. But then something amazing happened in my mind for the industry, but not so very nice for the digital fabrication side of things. Enscape arrived. And maybe I'm jumping a little bit, but bear with me a couple of seconds here. When Enscape arrived, we became so fast in producing all of the inputs and views that we forgot a little bit the importance of how to fabricate, because now it was more about creating fantastic computer games, basically, where you can run around. Big fan of computer games, but we lost a little bit of touch in the whole fabrication layer of things. And sadly, I've seen this for years now, also in-house, of course, that's my data points, but also when I see the industry, that the focus has moved more towards creating the images than the fabrication and exploration. But there's a hope, and that hope is in transformation projects. In transformation projects, you get a lot of the materials up front. Yeah. You get to go in and see what materials are available in your buildings, what can be used and not used. And then you have to take those materials and make them a little bit analog or digital again, and then figure out how you assemble them again. A little bit also when we spoke about the fish market, that many of the tools are offering so much on the quantities, the surface areas, all of those fantastic things that we like to look at from a data point of view. But it seems like there's no format who's discussing the joint. And now there's an opportunity with all of those timber structures, how to join things together with old and new different types of materials. So I'm really, really hoping that this is the layer that we will see now, that we will get a little bit back to the sources and actually touch materials a little bit again and look at that. Yeah.
I guess, is that also maybe a part of as a profession, we've become more image creators than architects, which are master builders. So, you know, whether it's Enscape, we create images. We're not connected with the act of making anymore so much. But digital fabrication maybe allows that. And I don't know if there's, for example, 3D printing. Yeah. You have this direct link to this making process. It's tangible. Is there any particular like digital fabrication methodology that you're particularly attracted to, where it's like CNC, timber, 3D printing, that kind of thing?
I think if point cloud scanners, is that part of this, the making thing?
It can be, yeah.
It can be. I think that's maybe where, I don't know if I will say most attracted to, but we are in a tech world, so let me just call it as it is. But I think that is very interesting field, because this is about getting information from a really non-digital world and being able to recreate that in the digital world, so that we have an opportunity to create new and amazing transformation projects. I find that actually very, very interesting. And the smarter we can get these point cloud models to be, the better it is. And we are in contact with a couple of companies that are utilizing, in my mind, very heavy AI-driven analysis models on the point cloud. So when you do a point cloud scan, it can go in and identify you are a door, you are a window afterwards. So that's maybe one of them that I'm very, very interested in. The second one is maybe, it sounds very, very odd what I'm saying now, but it's a little bit back to the laser cutter and big scale. We have built our first full timber project in Bornholm island on here in Denmark, Bornholm, and it was a full timber building, and it was these big CLT CLT.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the other one called?
CLT, glulam.
Yeah, CLT, mixing around with two surfaces that came in where everything was pre-cut in it. Like here's the window, here's the gonna be a door.
Yeah.
It went a little bit fast in the process, so there was a little bit of a manual thing going on the building side afterwards. But what became quite interesting to me and what we have been discussing lately is that a lot of the offcuts that comes with kind of the laser cutter approach here, can we begin to use technology to smartly recreate stuff that can be used as furniture or as other things in the project? Can it be the reverse thing, that suddenly your architecture is impacted by the offcuts you're doing? So it's maybe low tech to look at 2D again when we're in this amazing 3D world, but I found that story quite interesting of tapping into these offcuts of
reusing
of material. There was something there that just clicked with me. I just don't know what it is yet, but I just found it interesting from a material point of view, and also a little bit maybe a geometry and maker kind of again, where you have these cuts and you need to figure out what to do with them.
Yeah, I think that world of fabricating mass timber is like very approachable and usable, and like it's very familiar in one way.
Yeah.
But the offcuts thing, that's a fun idea. You can make like a modular Lego part from all the...
Yeah, here it really became that we had the data. We knew exactly what offcuts we had, and then we started looking into how can they be reused in furniture for there could be a desk in each of the hotel rooms. It could be a chair or a bench, all of those things. And then you can discuss what is good or bad architecture. I don't have the answer. I just know what I like. But I think in terms of the story and seeing maybe a simple process having quite a strong message is something that I like with that method here.
Yeah.
But,
another question that we ask a lot of people is like, for young architects out there that want to come and join FreeXN and maybe become one of these people in your like knowledge hubs of computation or BIM or something like that, what advice would you give them that are kind of interested to come join you guys, and how can they skill up? Or
yeah, I think we are still young, I will say, I hope. But to talk to the even younger talents out there, for me, I think I understand at the moment why there's a little bit of a nervous feeling of what should I do?
Yeah.
Because I think that is very obvious when you are out giving lectures at schools, at universities. You feel that there's an interest in learning, feel that there's an interesting and really pursuing these technologies, if we talk about that first. And you really feel that they feel that it's a steep learning curve, and they don't get that in university at the moment. Maybe some of them will not say 100% here. So maybe my advice could be dare to step a little bit out of your comfort zone. And again, I don't want to brand here, but AGN and others that are trying to tackle and show how you in practice are working with things. That could be a good way of just understanding the ideas. But I will also say, now I'm kind of completely saying the opposite now. I will also say that it's important that you come in with a fresh and open mind and show what you can do, because if you show us stuff that we already can do, then it's not interesting. We need people that are showing us new things, like things that we couldn't really see and foresee. And that's why I think one of the biggest things I might say, and that I've used for the past many years in business, and maybe a little bit dangerous to say online at the moment or recorded, but I try to answer as many mails or as many LinkedIn posts as possible from young students that want to ask advice about, it could be a thesis project, it could be about a survey they're doing, or it could be about a specific project they want to learn a little bit more of. I see no problem in taking 1 hour here and there of my time to discuss with students or young talents that are curious about this. Like last week, I took a Saturday off speaking with one in Brazil. I was curious about how we are enabling technologies both in the industry but also in the Scandinavian countries, and then yet again here in 3XN. I think that's maybe one of my most important advices, and what I maybe missed out when I was a student, but we didn't have all of these fancy places to connect as we have today. But really, we like to talk, we like to explore, and we like to collaborate. So to say that's maybe the two focus areas, and the third one is dare to challenge your university, dare to challenge the program. Just explore who cares about your grades out here. We care about ideas, we care about a really cool colleague, and we care about people that has other things in life than only work. Like go to concerts, go for a bike ride, go climb. I don't know what you do. It's a trend here that people they want to do a lot of exercises, so apparently that's what they do. But get away from work is almost sometimes my advice as well. I enjoy when you get people in that can inspire with a conversation that they have just been in out swimming in minus whatever water, and it's just interesting that you are spending time getting fresh air in your brain as well. So maybe also don't stress. I know it's difficult when you see all of these smart asses online on LinkedIn and those places that show the best. We need to maybe dare to show all of the process and all of the worst in us as well, so that people don't get scared that the learning curve is so steep here. So maybe I'm not saying specifically learn this software or learn this software, because I truly believe that all software can be taught, but it's the person and the mindset behind that where we have the issue or the opportunity. And stay cool and agile to your process, and then it's very easy to mimic your methods from Rhino to Revit to Grasshopper to coding. It seems to be like a learning curve that is not easy, but tangible, while the inspiration and all of this, it doesn't come from sitting, in my opinion, 15 hours in front of a computer. It comes from so much more. So also take it easy a little bit as well. Don't stress too much.
Go see some of the world.
Go see some of the world, talk to weird people, make some good food, or just find other places for inspiration. I think maybe that's what I realized when I was a student back in the days. That all of my summer vacations, I realized I never went to go for a summer job. I was part of these 4 nerds at the school where I went. That was part of a little cluster with 2 PhD students that liked to hack and code. And they always, for some reason, found money and funding each summer to do a pavilion. Oh, wow. And it was part of the cultural week in that city where the university was. And they like to explore from nature to structure and trying to see what happens if we use light as our source. What if it's music? How does that affect the structure? So I learned back in 7 and 8 how to weld. Never tried it before, but suddenly we had to weld the structure. And sadly, all of the sticks that we had to weld, they came from us having to cut them. So in the model, it was so cleanly modeled, 1-to-1. But when we had to build it, the tolerances in the end was so bad. But you learn a lot, and you learn so much about just daring to do something else than what people say. Maybe that's not maybe the best argument, but that's how I ended here. A little bit of a misfit in practice, I think.
Okay, now final question we've asked everyone is 2024, a lot going on. We're in the world of FOMO, of AI, 3D printing, game engines, all of this stuff going on. Is there something you're particularly excited for on the horizon in 2024?
There's maybe 2 things. I'm always, in some ways, curious and searching. That's both a fantastic skill to have and the worst thing to have, because then you never settle in some ways. And I think I already touched on the first one about how the industry needs to somehow disrupt itself. Mm-hmm. And somebody might say that this is a very, very, I'm nervous about that. I actually see it as a huge advantage. I will counter everyone in the offices around and have them look a little bit at their process again and what they do. And maybe there's some places where it could be fun to go to work and do something else. There must be something during the day that are really, really annoying to do. I can name the first 10 here, but I don't want to bother about that. I think we know what we're talking about. Yeah. So that is a little bit more on a higher level organization-wise in the industry. But another thing that I've thought about lately, and I've been talking to many about at conferences when we've been slightly a little bit drunk, that's maybe more a utopian thing that it might happen or it might not happen. But I'm very curious to see if there's a way of creating a material metaverse. A place where you basically have an IKEA digital furniture store for materials. Mm-hmm. So that, let's say we are in Australia for a project. Yeah. Then we have an opportunity to go into the world of materials in that metaverse. And then all of the people who has materials available actually have a digital footprint of the quantities.
Okay.
Yeah. It sounds, in my mind, super easy to do, but impossible to actually manage. But if there's a carrot on getting that digitalized, I think there's such a huge potential for scalability and knowing what is available out there. And it seems like that's a discussion we see a lot when we are out in the world, a scarcity of materials. So tech-wise, it can only be solved through tech. But I'm very curious to see if that can happen. Another thing that taps into that, and I have a feeling that all companies are saying the same, I will do it as well, but it's of course on the game engines. Yeah. I'm maybe not taking the architectural approach at the moment. I'm talking about the age of an architect and a creator. Because my nephew is playing Fortnite completely crazy at home and is way better than me in that world, because you now have to build stuff. And it's very interesting to see. I had him walking around here a couple of years ago when he was first encountered with what I actually do. And he immediately could see a link to his world. Oh, wow. Of how, oh, that's a person, I am that person, I can see this. So now when you see him build, of course he builds stuff for avoiding being shot, but there's all of these other places in the games where you have the opportunity to create. Yeah. And I think those game engines are, coming back to what I said earlier in the interview here, is about democratizing knowledge. Yeah. And that is maybe what I'm most nervous and most interested about. I'm seeing people that basically have tools available online where they can draw the full house themselves. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. I honestly don't know yet. But there will be some skills that need to be upgraded here and there to try to adapt to the new world. But personally, I feel that for me, looking forward, I honestly hope that there's even more collaboration happening between companies a little bit. I think it's good that we see the first companies that are beginning to open up a little bit more. But do we dare actually to honestly collaborate on things? That could be quite interesting to see. And that can be through technology, it can be through workshops, it can be through many things, but really hoping for that. But I will say this kind of material utopian metaverse is maybe an insane answer to something that is 100% not going to happen in 2024. But something that could start very, very low in just one project to see how do you map materials and how do you begin to visualize them in your scenes a little bit more, because we are at the moment all using Enscape and using a little bit the same materials, so it seems like all companies look alike. Yeah. What if it could become more personalized by the project and the materials you have available, that kind of taking an image and then immediately it's a material in your digital world. It's really tapping to both worlds. These overlays between digital and analog, that's maybe where I'm always finding myself in, for good and for bad.
That's interesting. I've not heard of that. Like a metaverse for material library is quite cool.
Thanks. I would say that I got a little bit tired when I heard so much about metaverse and building in metaverse. I was really sitting and thinking, should I live there? What is it? A financial game we are playing? What is it? And I see so much opportunity in actually building the analog world that and there's so much to do there with the help of technology. Without the help of technology, that there's enough to focus on there. So yeah, that's it was something that came up after I spoke with Cobus from NVIDIA about all of the things that they're pushing. Just had a little bit of a thought there, but of course a little bit of a crazy one.
Yeah. I like it. Game engines, gamification, democratization. I think it's all super interesting topics.
Yeah, very interesting topics. Yeah.